Hi everybody, welcome back once again to the Eastfield Gunroom YouTube channel. Now we like to bring you rare and exciting guns on this channel. We try and do it week in, week out. How's this for rare? One of one. But before we take a look at this very special gun, hit pause, hit like, hit subscribe, because we really appreciate all your support and it helps the channel to keep going. So what have we got for you today? I said it was 101. It's not a lie. This gun is a genuine, unique find. What we're going to look at today, because I'm guessing none of you will recognize just by looking what it is on the table, is another AYA. Now, a few weeks back, we had a look at the AYA number 2, probably the most famous and the most important gun in the AYA story in terms of side-by-sides. Now, if you know about AYAs, you'll know that for a number of years, they've also manufactured over and unders. Most historically, if you like, was the Yeoman over and under back in the early 1980s, sort of 82, 3, 4, 5, whatever. They flooded the UK with this cross bolt locking mechanism, a bit like a DT10, budget over and under, and they sold in their absolute droves. They were cheap, they were good, they worked. Game shooters liked them. They had multi-chokes in them, probably the first AYA gun to ever use multi-chokes. And following on from that, they also produced some higher end guns called the Coral and the Coral Deluxe, which was modeled on a Yeoman, but was a much, much prettier example. So this gun isn't based on a Yeoman. It's a completely different design in terms of the barrels, the action, everything. This is a Boss style action. Now, I've done a bit of research, but it's a little bit sketchy. My understanding is that another Spanish manufacturer by the name of Aramberry, I'm guessing his name was Victor because most Spanish manufacturers are called Victor, Victor Sarasquita, Victor Aramberry, Victor Kemen. And what happened is they did a deal and what allowed them to use their kind of design, their drawings, etc. Now, this gun was actually built in 1998, and this is an MD2. Now, the MD2, to all intents and purposes, I'll pick it up now, is a Boss style action. If you don't know what that means, it's obviously the low profile action with the bifurcated lumps, like a Perazzi, like a Kemen, like a Gamba. We've looked at Perazzis, we've looked at Gambas, we haven't looked at a Kemen yet, but stay tuned, it's coming soon. So just take the foreign off to tell you exactly what I mean and explain that to you. If you didn't know what that was and you'd only ever seen a Perazzi, you would think that was a Perazzi. It's identical. It's a complete clone of a Perazzi model. Obviously, it's Spanish made, so my interpretation of that is something possibly to do with Kemen or Kemen, or however you want to pronounce it, because it does look very, very similar in design. So this, for me, was kind of AYA's go at producing something that was higher end in terms of the over-under market, because you got a lot of people, and this time, this is a 1998 gun, shooting Perazzis. Gamba were massive here in the UK, as were Kemen, very, very popular Spanish makers, so it was a question of trying to compete at that level. I would imagine or understand a lot of the input from ASI, English-Spanish Imports here in the UK, was put into this gun. And the basic model is called an MD2. It's black action. It's quite a plain box-lock design. The reason this gun is so special is this is believed to be the only side plate model in existence. Now, this gun actually went through Holt's auction here in the UK about 5 or 6 years ago, and it was actually donated by ASI at the time to the auction for a charity or something like that, I understand. At that point, it was unfired. Since then, it's probably had 1 or 2 owners before I acquired it. But because of that, it makes it a complete and utter one-off. So I'm going to start with the action. We have got the low profile Boss design, completely blacked. We've got along the side. We've got a nice bit of border scroll work, very, very plain polished side plates. Now, this gun reminds me of a gun from a similar period, maybe a little bit earlier, which was the Lincoln Vogue. That was an Italian-made shotgun. And the Lincoln Vogue was similar to this. It was completely plain, you know, tiny bit of border scroll work, black action, long side plates, very nicely figured wood. And it kind of stood out in the field against anything else. Yes, there was a lot of people shooting old Browning B25 A1s that were black. There was a lot of Perazzis out there, but there was very, very few guns that had got a plain black side plate. So for me, at the time, it would have been quite a special looking gun. So Boss style action. Black side plates. We've got underneath some hand engraving. We've got MD2S just in the bottom of where the fore end latch is in. No doubt it's been hand engraved because you can just see, you know, it's not the best engraving in the world, but it's very typical of the kind of the scroll work you used to get on AYAs, the chasing that they used to do. The rest of it, I would have imagined, is done with a punch. It certainly won't be rolled on. We've got these kind of roses here where the stub pins go. The screws are nicely engraved. And we look inside, And again, it just screams Perazzi, it screams Kemen, it screams Gamba. I couldn't comment on the hardness of the metal because a lot of Spanish guns, like I've said in previous videos with the AOA number 2, they are renowned for using this kind of slightly inferior quality steel to manufacture their shotguns, with no offense to anybody who's got a Spanish shotgun or works in the Spanish shotgun industry, just what I'm telling you. So like I said, we've got the bifurcated lumps on the bottom of the barrels where they lock in. Nothing like a disc striker or anything like that. What you get with the AOA number 2 is the Silox example, which remember is the little disc where the firing pins sit in. So the idea is you don't have to completely remove the stock, be able to take the firing pins out and replace them. And you've got the AOA famous lion, I believe it is, sat on top of the logo on the top of the action there. Again, you can see looking at that the gun has not had a great deal of use. Remember, it's manufactured back in 1998. The top lever, plain again. We've got the continuation of this rose, which is on both sides of the action, the locking point. And at the back, we have got, just push the button in, which again is the same as a Perazzi. The button, the actual H-bar design, again, copy of a Perazzi, just in the side of the action there. Look at the checkering on the top lever on the one side, which is interesting because obviously it's a right-handed gun. Not that AOAs make left-handed levers, but the idea is you've got a little bit more grip to when you push it over. The only sad thing for me is it looks like a squashed pineapple that's been drawn by an 8-year-old. From the top lever, we go down the back strap to the safety catch. We have got a traditional, like you have with an Italian gun or like you'd have with a Kemen, side-to-side safety catch. You've got S made out in gold, U and O, and these little squiggly jobs. If you look carefully there, the actual selector button looks like a munchie, which for those who don't know is a little chocolate snack. Right, flip it over, look at the trigger. Again, completely plain underneath, which I think is a nice touch. Black trigger guard, no roll trigger or anything like that like we had with the A number 2. Polished trigger, blue trigger, which is a little bit different in the style of the polishing to the trigger guard itself. Not sure whether that was accidental design. And then another nice touch right at the back of the trigger guard is the serial number of the gun, which again will be hand engraved. Now, moving on to the barrel. Now, when I first saw this gun, it kind of screamed to me Perazzi MT6, which is an old classic Perazzi made in the late 1980s, mid 1980s-ish. And that also had floating barrels, a very similar rib design, and a very similar bead. So everywhere you look at this gun, it's like they've took a Perazzi and gone, yeah, we can build this gun, we can compete. And they've, in essence, copied it, not dissimilar to what Yieldits have done with the current Yieldits Pro model. AOA on the barrels, a little bit of squiggly stuff. We have got a slightly tapered, I think it's about 9x7 rib on the top. I haven't actually measured it, I apologize for that, but it's tapered. File cut, floating barrels. Like I said, just at the end, not dissimilar to an MT6 or like an old Olympic skeet gun kind of gun from Perazzi, or there was another Spanish maker that sprung to mind, a little bit like Aaron Berry, which was a Crompson, and they made guns similar to this. Ventilated rib, obviously not ventilated barrels because we've got the center rib missing completely. And if you turn the barrels over, again, we've got the little AOA Lion, 1270, which is the caliber and the chamber length, so 12 gauge, 70 millimeters. The serial number with the proof house stamp and saying that it was built in 1998 because that's part of the serial numbers. It's the same with all AOAs and all Spanish shotguns of this period. And then we go on to the side. Now, this is a 28-inch version. I should have said that. 28-inch with kind of a sporting setup because of the rib width, fixed choke quarter half. But interestingly enough, it's actually proofed at 1200 kg, which means it's magnum proofed. So even though it's only 2 3/4 inch, you could go out, put some big heavy cartridges through this, and it'd make a nice gun for somebody that likes shorter barrels. You know, like I said, back in the late 90s, and we go back even further, 28-inch was very prevalent. A lot of people used them. So 28-inch in a sporting gun from that period, not uncommon at all. So because it's magnum proof, put big cartridges through it, nice and smooth to shoot, really, really good all-rounder. Then we've got the little stars denominating what the chokes are. The weight of the barrel is 1422. The reason it's quite light, of course, is because it hasn't got a center rib. And again, you look at the ejector setup and it's just Perazzi, Perazzi, Perazzi. So it's £8 one-ish, nice and tight still. And it doesn't feel, I refer back to the AOA Yeoman, which was their real cutthroat budget over under that they produced by the billions. If you've ever opened and closed one of those, it's completely different to this. It's a completely different sensation. The Yeoman feels cheap and a bit tinny when you open and close it, whereas this, although it hasn't got the feel of something like a Perazzi, it's still got a nice positive clunk to it. So how does it balance? 8 pound 1 ounce, so just over that magical 8 pound mark, although it's 28 inch. Like I said, that extra bit of weight would mean a nice all-rounder for someone who likes shooting shorter barrels, and there's lots of us. Balance-wise, pretty good. And again, that can be attributed to the fact he's got fixed choke barrels and a little bit of extra weight here between the hands where you want it. So moving on to the ward, and as soon as I saw this gun, it reminded me very much of an old Miracle 3800 grade 3 that I owned many years ago. The figuring's very similar. Even the height of the comb is not far off. With the side plated action, we need the strength. I bang on about it all the time, but wood is not there just to look pretty. It's also there to be functional and to do a job. Of course, with this being one of one, this gun never made it to market. I would imagine that ASI had a lot of input in trying to get it to market and to get this prototype right. Who knows why it didn't end up there, but that's another story. We've got a nicely figured European walnut with a nice satin oil finish. Like I said, straight through the head, figured at the back. Pistol grip stock, feels very nice. And interestingly enough, this gun is 15.5 inches length of pull. So again, if you look at the fact that particularly in this country, we have a lot of tall shooters that need longer stocks, higher stocks, I would imagine the input from ASI was critical in producing this prototype because we've got a long stock with a factory fitted recoil pad. I know that because I looked at the images when the gun was sold at Holt. It had exactly the same pad on it then. But more importantly than that, the stock height is absolutely bang on. Now, typically you would get 22 mil of drop from the drop at comb to the drop at heel on a gun of this kind of ilk of age. There's only about 6 or 7 mil of drop on this. It's almost parallel. I think I measured it at 38.44. So what that does mean, it gives you a nice high comb, good sight picture, very little variation in terms of the sight picture depending on where you put your head because it's almost parallel. And what that would mean, it would suit the kind of taller guy with a longer neck. And that just makes it even better from my point of view, even more usable. When you find a gun like this, it's completely unique. The last thing you really want to be doing is putting adjustable combs on it, making it longer, making it shorter. So what this will give, it will give the new owner at some point the opportunity to shoot it as it was produced and still have a good fitting gun. So I mentioned the butt pad. It is a typical of the period, white line with a black spacer on the back and a little bit of ventilation. Over the years, these tend to kind of dry out, so I'm not too sure about the quality of its recoil reduction these days. However, because of the weight of this gun, it probably won't kick a great deal anyway. Double point checkering, then we move on to the fore end. Interesting, we've got double point checkering again, which I like. Quite a big lip on this, like Mick Jagger, to be fair. It is bulbous at the front. I'm not a fan of that, but then again, you know, this was, in essence, it is a prototype gun, so they were playing around with things, and had things been different at the time period and Kemen, Perazzi and Gamba, for example, had not been where they were in terms of popularity, then they might have fine-tuned this further and maybe brought it to market. Who knows? Forend wood itself is a nice match to the stock. The coloration is good, a little bit straighter in the grain. And the forend catch, again, very similar to a Kemen of the period, a Perazzi of the period. It's everywhere you look at this gun, it's just been copied. Incidentally, 18.5 bores on this one, so it's slightly over nominal board. So again, from an all-rounder point of view, if you wanted something, let's face it, and I've said it on this channel a number of times, not everybody wants to shoot a silver pigeon or a 5.25. I get a lot of people contact me about guns of yesteryear they wish they'd owned, and they say, Matt, can you source this for me? Well, absolutely no problem if you're looking for old Winchesters, Nickos, etc. But this is a genuine one-of-one. There is nothing else like this, and that's why I wanted to show it to you. But like I said, from an ownership point of view, people who want something different, this is understated. It's got a lot of history, a lot of pedigree behind the name. People will not expect it to be an AOA if you ever have this in your hands, as most people watching the channel, I'm sure at the start of this video said, what's that? So if you've got any questions about this fabulous little AOA, please contact me directly. Don't forget to check out the website. If you haven't already liked the channel and subscribed to it, please do that because it does help us to keep bringing you this fabulous content week in, week out, and we do appreciate your support. From me, Matthew Morgan at Eastfield Gunroom, and I'm not joking, a genuine one-off, maybe the rarest gun in the world, who knows. I'll see you again soon.